So regarding this philosopher that I was talking to a psychologist, names won't matter because I don't know them any more than you know them. It was just an incredible encounter that he had had. So this gentleman is now well into his 70s, written books, a number of books, a bright person being interviewed by a very bright psychologist who has a wealth of knowledge in a various amount of fields. So anyway, he was sharing, and these two used to be best friends way back in the day. So he was sharing with his friend. He says, "Yeah, I had an interesting situation happen to me 10, 15 years back." He said, I was admitted to the hospital because I had had a really bad bout of Crohn's, the bowel disease, right? And while in the hospital on morphine and everything else, he says I had a visitation by a being, or an apparition, or something. But there was, in my mind, I was seeing a physical being speaking to me in the room, the hospital room, and it showed him a couple of volumes of his life. Now, this gentleman's not religious, but wasn't obviously at the same time spooked or freaked out by this agent being. Showed him a couple of volumes of his life, and then this third volume he brought and showed him was empty pages, and he said to the philosopher, "You need to fill that yet." So gets out of the hospital, and of course his mind is pondering what had happened. Whether that was an apparition or God himself or a deity or a being. Again, didn't matter. He was visited by something that he felt was real, but it never happened to him before. So late 60s, maybe late 60s, maybe, when this had happened to him. So anyway, he goes home, and the next thing he starts having is dreams. As he's pondering, he says, well, before these dreams happened, he got back home. He thought, I wonder what that being was trying to indicate. I have a third volume I have to fill. I personally have to. But is he talking about me writing a book, or because he's a writer, as most philosophers are? So during a space of the next little while, he started getting in dreams downloads of, just like you, specifically more than me, but downloads of information. And he'd wake up with all this information. He started writing, and then he'd be having conversations with the being, and sometimes they'd be getting into arguments, and sometimes they'd be telling the being to go away. So he was in the midst of writing this book, and or putting his thoughts together for this next book. And so he was in a plane in America somewhere, and while flying, and he has a heart attack on board. Lo and behold, if not on that plane, same plane, was a cardiologist who immediately takes over, says, you've got to turn this plane around and get it down as quick as you can. This man needs a hospital like yesterday. So he saved his life, and he continued to write this book, and and it was about this encounter with God, and then him reflecting on other philosophers and their thoughts about God. So yeah, he ended up writing a book, but it was just interesting the way he was talking about his encounters with this being, and how, the coming and going stuff, and communicating sometimes but not always, and very similar to what you and I have experienced. um, I, more so than you, I call it God sometimes. I call it a deity. I call it a being. I call it an agent, because quite frankly, we don't really know what it is on the other side that's interrupting our lives with information. We know it means well, and it doesn't always stop ill health from happening, as we both are aware of, as this gentleman is aware of. But it certainly was wanting and encouraging him to write information, just as it's spoken and encouraged us in different ways. So it's just, again, different people experiencing these different kinds of interceptions by the other side. By, sometimes we, as I just said, some people call it God or the universe or a spirit guide or an agent, a being. It's like I say, we've written lots well on earth about what we think these are, but in reality, we are human trying to describe a different being. It's pretty difficult for us to have real good clarity on what it really is, because our perspectives, our mindset, our background, our cultural experiences, our religious experiences all play into helping to create a part of the conversation of what we think that being is. But it was just interesting listening to him, because I thought of us, and just all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a being is interrupting and talking to us, um, or having arguments with us. Or I've had arguments with it, maybe more so than you. It's interesting. It was interesting listening to that.